I want to say thank you to our divisional staff for allowing me to come up here this morning and tell you all my story of grace. I don't have much time, so I'm going to tell you what it was like, what happened on my road to Damascus, and what it's like now. What it was like was absolutely horrible. I had a huge hole in my soul, and it's not really a huge theological explanation for as to why. It's simple. I was made by and for Christ, and I didn't have Christ in my life, in which case I felt miserable. I was one of those skeletons that Steve was talking about, walking dead. And to numb that, I went right into the drugs at an early age, started smoking pot. If you're in here and you've been smoking pot, let me tell you, the devil is lying through his teeth if he's telling you that you're going to be able to smoke pot and live life and still live out somewhat of a destiny. That only happens in the movies. It only gets worse from this point. I started getting into the hard drugs in high school. Heroin, pornography, you name it, stealing from Ma. I did what I had to do to numb this hole in my heart. I felt absolutely miserable. Graduated high school, started getting arrested nonstop, selling drugs, started overdosing. I made it to the age of 21 when I hit my final drug overdose. I was in the hospital for 3 days as I was loaded on heroin and a bunch of alcohol. I woke up after 1 day of being in the hospital. The doctor said, "Mr. Mercier, if you have so much as one more smidge of heroin, one more drop of alcohol, you will die. There's no doubt about it. Your body cannot take it." I was 100% spiritually dead and 99.9% physically dead. I needed a place to go. I didn't want to get help, but looking at my ma, if you love your ma like I love my ma, and you see your mom's face, and you see how miserable she looks, you do stuff for her. And I couldn't stand seeing my ma look like that. So I said, I'll get some help. So we looked all over for a place that would help me, but every place that we went to was too expensive. Drug rehabs aren't cheap. And we began to lose hope. But then my ma got a call. She said, "Joe, there's a place for you to go, and it's called the Salvation Army. It's in St. Petersburg, and it's a place for you to go." And so I said, "Ma, I know things are hard right now, but seriously, a thrift store? How's a thrift store going to get me sober?" So I walked on up in there on November the 10th, 2011. I was in there where I met a guy named Ryan Mayo. Y'all ever heard of Ryan Mayo? Ryan was in the ARC. He'd been following Christ for a little while, and he came up to me and he said, "Joe, you are a dead man, and if you want, man, you can follow me. I follow Christ, and but we'll follow Christ together. True discipleship is not when someone comes up to you and says, 'Hey, I know Christ, so you follow me, and I'll follow Christ.' But true discipleship is when someone says, 'I know Christ, so let's follow Christ together.'" And that's what Ryan wanted, and that's when he took me in. But I didn't want it. So I went weeks in that center, and a doctor came to me. He came into the center to come and tell me that, "Mr. Mercier, you have a blood disease that's killing your organs from the inside out, and if you don't do something very soon, then you will be dead within the next couple of years." That was my final straw right there. I went to Ryan. I found him in that center. I told him everything that was going on. I poured my heart out to him, and then he said, "Joe, I can give you all the advice that you want, but the reality is that you need Jesus." So that night, Thanksgiving night, 2011, I gave my heart to Jesus. I said, "Jesus, I'm a messed up person. I have nothing to offer you." And Jesus said, "That's okay. I got messed up on a cross for you. I got annihilated on a cross for you. And you're just good the way you are." So I didn't walk off that altar too different of a guy. In fact, to be honest with you, I wish I could tell you that it was all peaches and roses, but life got miserable. I was lucky if I got 3 hours of sleep a night. Satan was attacking me like it was no one's business in that center because he knew that one moment he was about to kill me, and then the next moment I was about to go and preach the gospel to the whole world, and he knew that. So life got real hard. I got invited to this thing called TYI, and that was in 2012. Guy Steve Carter was there preaching. He was preaching from Ecclesiastes, spoke about how everything outside of the realms of God is pure and utterly meaningless. Everything in my life that wasn't around the realms of God had to be cast out. By the end of that week, I felt this call and this tug on my heart to become a Salvation Army officer and go and win the world for Him. Now, the thing is that I'm not qualified for that at all. I probably have the lowest GPA of anyone in my session. I am not a theologian. I'm not good at any of this stuff. Do you know what the job qualifications is for a Salvation Army officer? They don't even know. But you just go. But you just go. But you know what? If you have a story of grace, and you have a story of grace to tell, and that's going to be my ministry right there. So I just go. I told Captain Dan Nelson that day, and he said, Joe, your Salvation Army officership doesn't start when you walk across that stage and you salute the commissioner. Your Salvation Army officership, it starts right here, right now. So I started living that out. Jesus says, you go and make disciples, and I will be with you. So I started discipling people, and God was with me. You're wondering why things aren't moving in your life so much right now. Start discipling people. Allow God to move you, and you will see the power of God in a mighty way. I met a beautiful chick named Megan, and I got just so much hotter than I am, and so much cooler, and I asked her to go on a date with me at the ARC in the cafeteria. It's about as romantic as it sounds. There was 120 guys and me, but I fell in love at first sight. And I'll close with this. I found the statistics in an addiction book. They say that 9 out of 10 alcoholics die from alcoholism. The reality is that the only way that the statistics weren't going to become a reality in my life is if I dug into this 10 times harder than I did into my drugs and my alcohol. This is my safe place right here. This is not a book. This is Jesus. This is Jesus right here. 45 more seconds, and I promise I'll get off. When I was in the midst of my addiction 5.5 to 6 years ago, I was arrested for my biggest drug charge. It was trafficking in hydrocodone. I sold a whole bunch of pills to an undercover cop, and I was looking at a minimum mandatory 15 years in state prison, and the judge was ready to give me all 15 years. You start doing crazy things when you're about to get 15 years in prison. Me and my mom and my stepdad, I was about a month away from going to the judge to go into that prison, and we sat in our living room, and my mom said to me with a straight face, Joe, we have a family friend, and he has a Learjet, and in the middle of the night, we're going to put you on that Learjet, and you're going to go to Costa Rica, where you're going to stay. No, dead serious. You're going to stay there for the rest of your life. The feds are not going to come looking for you there, and you're going to stay there. And you might die of alcoholism there, but that's just what's going to happen, because you start doing crazy things when your son is about to go to prison for 15 years. Here's the power of God. I obviously didn't get those whole 15 years. That undercover cop didn't have the full evidence that he needed. I still got some time. Here's the power of God. Last week, me and my session mates, the Heralds of Grace, went to Costa Rica and proclaimed the gospel of Jesus Christ. And over 220 souls in Costa Rica stepped in to the grace of God as God used our session in a mighty way. That's the power of God. If you have a story of grace and you have a story of grace to tell, God bless you. Thank you.